I'm going to start with something that still makes people blink at me like I'm making it up. A billionaire handed me the keys to his penthouse on a Thursday night. Then he slid a contract across the marble island and said, calm as tap water, "Read it, out loud." My hands shook so hard, I thought the papers would rattle right off the counter. If it were you, what would you have done? My name is Tessa. I'm the woman you've probably seen at the bus stop at 5 a.m., hair pulled into a tight bun, because one loose strand feels like one more thing I can't afford to manage. Uniform still smelling like the bleach from my second job. A grocery receipt folded inside my shoe because it's the only place I don't lose it. I've been poor in a lot of ways, but the worst is when you're poor on time. When every hour is spoken for, when sleep turns into a rumor, you keep meaning to check out. The night that started all of this, I was in the back pew of St. Bridget's, the old church with the broken heater, and the kind janitor who keeps the side door cracked because he knows some of us need quiet with no questions. My daughter Bella was home with our neighbor, Mrs. Choon Cough, heavy in her chest again. That hollow kind that sounds older than 7 years old should ever sound. The doctor wanted a new medicine, $300, if the insurance denied it again, which it usually did, and rent was 9 days late, which Mrs. Alvarez had kindly not mentioned in the hall. But the orange paper on my door said it well enough, so I did what I was raised to do. I prayed. I didn't whisper a polite, tidy prayer. Either I told the truth the way a person tells it, when the only witnesses are a wooden cross and their last nerve. I said, God, I am 2 months behind. My child needs the medicine. Her shoes are too small again. My ribs feel like they're learning to count my breaths because they can't find any extra, and I am trying. If there is a door, I am asking you to crack it open. That's when I heard the footsteps, slow echoing through the nave like the building itself was listening. I wiped my face fast because pride doesn't have a price tag, but it sure acts like it. And I turned. A man stood there in a charcoal coat and shoes that made no sound when he moved closer, which is how I knew they were expensive. He didn't sit in the pew. He sat on the floor a respectful distance away, like he knew a pew could feel like a stage when you're crying on it. I'm not here to bother you, he said. Voice easy. Not a whisper. Not a show. I've had nights in here too. I stared longer than manners recommend, because I knew that face from the business section papers people leave on the bus. It took me a second to place the name. Ethan Cole, the guy who started some tech thing and sold it, and then started another one and didn't sell. And now magazine covers called him visionary, like that word wasn't once reserved for prophets and painters. Are you lost? I asked, because it was easier than asking, why are you in my quiet? He smiled like he'd forgotten how until just then. All the time, he said, but not tonight. My driver grew up in this neighborhood. He told me about St. Bridget's back door. He said sometimes if you're trying to hear yourself think this is the place. I didn't say anything. I don't make sport of talking to glittering people. You can lose a whole evening to a stranger's curiosity and still not buy medicine. But he didn't fill the silence. He let it sit. That told me more than his shoes did. What are you asking for? He said finally, without the question mark, like he was opening a drawer, and I could either use it or close it. A way out, I said. But in the meantime, a way through. He nodded. How much is the way through tonight? I laughed. It came out wrong, almost a cough. You don't get to fix me because you walked into my prayer by accident. I'm actually very bad at fixing people, he said, eyes steady. But I'm decent at buying time. Sometimes time is the only tool you need. I wanted to argue, because every movie where the rich guy swoops in leaves out the part where rent is due again next month, and the pharmacy doesn't care about your character arc. Still, Bella's cough, the orange paper on the door, the way my thoughts were starting to fray like the cuffs of my coat. "What are you offering?" I asked. "Please don't say a blank check. That's a horror story in my world." "Fair." He looked around the empty church like he was asking permission from the walls. "Tonight, the medicine, and a warm bed for you and your daughter that isn't next to a space heater I don't trust. Tomorrow, an appointment with a pediatric pulmonologist who owes me a favor. After that, nothing you don't ask for. Even if you ask for nothing." "You do this often?" I said, because suspicion is free, and sometimes it's the only tool you can afford. "No," he said. "Once a long time ago, someone did it for me. I've been trying to repay it correctly ever since. I fail a lot. You can help me not fail this time." He said it like a person who had learned the hard way that charity can be a performance and help can be a hand that squeezes too tight. He was giving me the lever. I could say no. I could say yes with terms. The power in that choice hit me so hard, I had to steady my breathing. "Okay," I said. "Terms. No cameras. No posts. No, 'look how generous I am' articles. No strings I don't see. And you don't talk to my landlord." "I do." "Agreed," he said. Without blinking, "I'll have Thomas get the car." I almost said I can't ride in your car, because my bus pass already has tomorrow's fare planned on it. And if I switch the plan, the math breaks. The math, always the math. Then I thought of Bella's shoe with the tape I kept meaning to replace with proper glue, and I followed him out the side door. Pattern interrupt. My apartment smelled like fried onions and cold dust, that particular winter odor that comes from radiators pretending to work. Mrs. Chun was on the couch crocheting like she always is. Quick hands and sharper eyes. She clocked Ethan in a single glance, and her lips made a thin line I knew well. This is the woman who's lived 3 lives and sends men packing with one look. I said he's paying for Bella's prescription tonight. She raised one eyebrow so high it could have scraped the ceiling, then nodded once. That's her version of proceed. Bella was asleep, mouth soft flush on her cheeks. That wasn't the good kind. Seeing her next to a stranger in our doorway rang every alarm bell I own. I said, "We'll go, but I ride in the back with her." He said, "Obviously." No offense taken. That helped. At the overnight pharmacy, the pharmacist slid the bag with the reverence of someone who knows $300 is a month's worth of corners you cannot cut. Ethan handed over his card. Without the flinch rich people practice, so they can pretend money is abstract. He didn't look at me waiting for a thank you. He looked at Bella. That mattered. "Hotel," he said, as we stepped back into the cold. Nearby, clean quiet. I surprised myself. "No. You said warm bed. You said safe. We go where you sleep. I will know where we are. I won't owe a stranger at a front desk a story." That was the first time he looked surprised. Then he looked relieved. "Okay," he said. "My place has a guest suite. 2 bedrooms. Locks that only you and I can control. Cameras turned off except the hallway and the lobby. Ask me to show you the footage from tonight if you want to. Transparency is the only way this works." He was either very practiced or very honest. I decided to let tomorrow judge which. His penthouse didn't smell like anything. That's how you know a place is expensive. Real people's homes smell like laundry garlic, carpet shampoo, vanilla candles, old books. This place smelled like views. Floor-to-ceiling glass, the city spread out like a map. Every light a story I'd never get to hear. Bella, half asleep on my shoulder, breathed deeper when I laid her on the guest room bed. Ethan stood in the doorway like a hotel manager who cares if you sleep. "Keys," he said, And he handed me 2 on a small ring. Guest suite door, main entrance. Don't give them back until you want to. And this. He put a slim folder on the dresser. The contract. This is where I bristled. I didn't come for paperwork. He held up both hands, palms out. It's not what you think. I learned to write these because charity without boundaries becomes power, and power without accountability becomes harm. The contract says what I will not do. It says what you owe me, which is nothing. It says what I can pay for how long, and who makes decisions about your child's care. You do. It also says what happens if either of us wants to walk away. Cleanly, I flipped it open, ready to catch the trap. It was in plain language, not those 16-syllable words that mean the opposite of what they say. It said exactly what he said it said. I read it out loud because I needed to hear my own voice say the boundaries. He listened without correction, without adding footnotes like men sometimes do when they think you missed a nuance. At the end, I initialed every page because my grandmother taught me to leave a trail, and I signed. He signed. We didn't shake hands. That felt right. Pattern interrupt. Morning came brighter than it had any business being. There's something obscene about sunshine when your life is still deciding whether it wants to crash or climb. Bella woke up smiling like she'd been saved by a trampoline in her dreams. "Mama, the pillows are clouds," she said. And I swallowed a small lump because I remembered the last decent pillow we had was a hand-me-down from a hotel when my cousin worked there one summer. At the pulmonologist's office, Dr. Nguyen spoke to Bella. First explained the tests, showed her the spirometer like it was a game she could win. Which of course she did, because my kid treats instructions like challenges and rules, like opportunities to show off. He adjusted her meds, called the insurance in front of us, and said, "Put me on with a supervisor." The way nurses do when they've decided to bulldoze a system politely. We left with samples, a discount card, and an appointment for a follow-up. Time. Bought. Borrowed. I felt it like a new muscle waking up. You want the twist? I'll get there. But first let me put you in the small days that made it matter. For a week, we slept in the guest suite. I left at dawn to make my shift at the diner, then the office cleaning, then the weekend grocery shift. Because bills don't care who you're living with. Ethan disappeared into work during the day and reappeared at night like a controlled burn. Answering emails as if he wasn't answering them. Looking up from the laptop. When Bella walked into the room, because he understands, that's when a child learns where she ranks in the order of things. He asked me questions like a student, not a savior. What does the grocery store do that wastes your time? How does the diner schedule wreck your sleep? Which forms eat you alive? He wrote it all down in a notebook that already had 100 other lives inside it. I could tell from the bent pages and the corners, where the pen dug in hard. On day 8, I said we needed to go home. He didn't argue, just said I'll have Thomas drive. I said no, I'll take the bus. He said okay, and that was the moment I knew he wasn't addicted to being the hero. He was learning to be useful. Home. Except not. The orange paper had multiplied. 3 notices now. One said, "Final." I felt my stomach fall through my shoes. Mrs. Alvarez stood in the hall with that particular sympathy landlords get when they know they like you, but math doesn't care. I held them off, she said. But management sent the file upstairs. Corporate wants the unit. Corporate. That word is a gray cloud with teeth. I bit mine. I'll bring what I can. Friday, I said. The rest next week. She nodded, eyes shiny because she's seen mothers making the math dance, and she knows the dance always ends when the music does. 2 days later, Thomas called while I was in the break room staring at a stale donut like it could answer questions. "Tessa," he said, voice soft in my cheap phone. "Mr. Cole asked me to double-check something about your building. Do you know the name Wyndham Urban Partners?" I didn't, but I knew the logo. It was on the letterhead of the most recent notice. Why I said slow, like I was testing the word on my tongue first. Thomas hesitated. "Because Wyndham is a subsidiary of Cole Holdings, Mr. Cole's holding company." The donut turned into sawdust in my mouth. The lights in the break room flickered, or maybe that was my blood pressure. I hung up. I stood there with my hands on the table and my head down like I was bracing for a wave. And then I went looking for him. I didn't call first. I walked into the Cole Holdings lobby like anger had paid for my bus fare. The receptionist tried to give me the visitor badge with the kind smile you use on people who look like me, the smile that says we will help you if your errand is simple. I said, "Tell him Tessa is here, and it's urgent." She must have heard something in my voice because she didn't argue. 30 seconds later, Thomas appeared like a man who can see storms and knows how to move people out of their way. In Ethan's office, I didn't sit. "You own my landlord," I said. "You saved my kid, and you pay the company that's about to throw her out." He looked like I'd slapped him with a wet towel. Pain first, then confusion, then something like shame. "I didn't know," he said. "I don't run day to day on every subsidiary. But ignorance is not an alibi." He hit a button on the intercom. "Get me legal and residential. Now." He looked at me again. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," I said, and my voice cracked on the hard edge of it. "Be responsible. You want terms. Here's a new one. Nobody in your chain gets to profit off my eviction while you're buying my kid's medicine." His jaw set in that way successful men learn in mirrors, but the eyes stayed human. "Agreed," he said. "Completely." Then the conference call was live, and I listened to acronyms I didn't know and policies I've been crushed by my whole adult life. He said words that were unfamiliar coming out of his mouth and very familiar coming out of theirs. Grace period, hardship index, relocation assistance. He asked a question that made one of the department heads pause too long. How many notices were filed in the last quarter within the zip codes we flagged for housing insecurity? He waited. Then he said, "Pull the number. Bring me the names behind it. We will change this policy this week. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind." Residential tried to make the case that they were simply following standard procedure. Legal tried to put foam around the edges of responsibility, which is their job. "I get it." Ethan listened. Didn't shout, asked for the org chart, circled 3 names with a pen, like he was cutting the right wires on a bomb, and said, "We're done evicting on late notices alone in any building we own or manage. Evictions require a review by a human committee with authority to grant extensions, payment plans, or rent relief. Partner with local nonprofits. Build a fund. Draft it. Today." He hung up, then looked at me. "I can't undo the fear of the papers on your door," he said. "But I can make sure fewer doors get them. Do you think that's fair? That a phone call can change policy while a mother has to sort quarters to buy bread? I don't. But I will not lie and say I wasn't grateful. I was grateful and furious at the same time. You know what I mean. That uneasy feeling when help comes from the same hand that held power over you 5 minutes ago. "Are we still okay?" he asked. And I said the truest thing. We will be when the paper changes. It changed. Fast. Distractingly. Fast. You can do that when the person who signs the checks decides to move. That week, Wyndham Urban Partners rolled out a hardship review panel. They hired a social worker. They stopped filing evictions automatically after the second notice. Did it solve everything? No. Did it stop my hands from shaking every time I rounded the corner to my door? A little. The press found out anyway. Not because of me. Rumor has a way of finding microphones. A reporter ambushed me outside the bodega with a camera and a smile with teeth in it. "Tessa, tell us how it felt to be rescued by Ethan Cole," she said, sing-song and sweet. Rescued. That word makes my spine go cold. "I bought time," I said. "He bought time. We used it." She didn't like the grammar. She wanted a fairy tale. I wanted the rent control board to hold a hearing where the people who approve utility hikes had to make eye contact with the mothers who can't refrigerate milk for a week without their lights being cut off. 2 different programming schedules. Ethan called that night. "I didn't leak," he said. "But I won't lie if someone asks. We changed policy. That should be public." "Then say it is policy," I said. "Not charity. Not a pet project. Not a story about me looking grateful in your lobby. Say you were wrong. Say you learned. Watch how fast people tell you they did too." He was quiet for a beat. "Will you stand next to me when I say it?" "No," I said. "Because then the story becomes your generosity and my gratitude. And what I need is for it to become your responsibility and my dignity." You could hear him breathe. Then he said, he did it. He stood at a podium under too many lights and said the sentence I thought I'd never hear from a man who could buy my building twice and not notice. We profited from a system that punishes the poor for being poor. We are changing our policy because it is wrong, not because it looks good. You could feel half the room lean in and the other half lean out. That's fine. Change always makes people choose a direction. Meanwhile, life. Bella's cough eased. She started sleeping like a child again. Her reading leveled up so fast, I had to ask the librarian to help me keep up with her. I learned to rest without guilt for the first time in years. Not long naps in the afternoon. I'm not that person. But 15 minutes, where I put my head down and didn't wake up choking on a dream about numbers. Ethan asked me to consult for a thing he was building. Not a job where I sat at a fake desk and pretended to do something. A real role. "I need someone who knows where the cracks are," he said. "We're designing a program that bridges from crisis to stability for our tenants and for employees at our vendors. A 3-month runway with actual cash. Not coupons, job training with paid hours, childcare vouchers, and a coach who doesn't talk in acronyms. We're calling it Bridge, but only if you like the name." I said, "Change the name later if you must. Change the rules now." He grinned like a man who lives for a clean problem statement. "Deal. Here's something nobody tells you. When your life starts to improve, you might grieve. Sounds ridiculous, right? But I cried in the supermarket aisle when I picked the brand I wanted instead of the one that was cheapest. I shook the first time I used the guest suite shower, like the water would stop mid-shampoo. I apologized to the cashier when my card went through. Trauma teaches you to flinch. Safety teaches you how to stop, but the lessons don't show up the same week." Pattern interrupt. People started to ask if we were a couple. The internet did its thing. The comments were half fairy dust, half knives. I won't spend long on that part, because the truth is both simpler and more complicated. Did I fall a little in love with the way he read bedtime stories like there was no meeting on the other side of the wall? Yes. Did he fall a little in love with the way Bella curled into the corner of the couch and made the whole room feel like a living thing? I think so. Did we leap? No. We built. Fortunately. Slowly. With my terms. With his learning. with the awareness that money can buy time, comfort choices, but it cannot buy the work two people have to do to share a life. The board at Cole Holdings didn't love bridge at first. The CFO, a woman I later discovered, keeps an index card in her wallet that says, "Return on investment like a prayer asked in a meeting." What's our measurable benefit? Ethan said, "We keep good workers. We reduce turnover. We increase loyalty. We improve tenant stability, which lowers vacancy costs, and we get to look at ourselves in the mirror. That last part won't show up on a spreadsheet. I'm okay with that." She wasn't. She voted no. 3 others voted no politely, because polite people can say no in ways that feel like they're saying yes. Ethan didn't power through. He did the thing I didn't expect. He asked me to speak. In a boardroom. Me in my best black blouse and my thrift store heels that I had resoled with the money from my first consulting check. I told them about the time my boss at the diner moved me from the 6 to 2 shift to the 2 to 10 without notice, and how childcare math breaks like a cheap chair when you do that. I told them about the month my electric bill doubled because the building's old wiring made the meter spin, and the landlord said it wasn't their problem because legally it wasn't. And legally meant I cried in a dark kitchen quietly so Bella wouldn't worry. I told them about the first time I didn't have to count every grape before I bought a bag, and how my hands still did it anyway. Then I said the line that changed the temperature. "You don't need to rescue people," I told them. "You need to stop designing systems that make rescue necessary. Bridge isn't charity. It is insurance against your own short-sightedness. It will pay you back in people who stay in apartments that don't sit empty, in communities that don't resent your logo on the corner." Silence. Then the CFO surprised me. "I don't like the squishy parts," she said, "but I like that sentence. Put it in the memo." The vote shifted. 7 to 4. Bridge launched. Bella got better. Not miraculous better. Human better. Fewer coughs, stronger lungs. A smile that took up more of her face. She made a friend named Zadie, who wears glitter like it's her job. They built forts out of couch cushions in the guest suite, while I filled out paperwork for a real apartment we could afford, in a building with decent wiring. Ethan didn't hover, but the man knows how to hang a curtain rod without making it a TED Talk. He showed up with a toolbox and a quiet joy that made me suspicious at first, and then grateful without the suspicion tagging along. We moved. On our own lease. Furniture that wasn't borrowed. Bills that were on autopay, because for the first time I didn't fear a surprise invoice more than I feared missing a rent letter. Bridge helped with the deposit. My consulting turned into a full-time role, designing better on-ramps for people who work hard and still got pinned down by the rules. I learned to say words like deliverable without rolling my eyes. I kept my diner job part-time for a while because leaving felt like breaking a promise to the girl who used to count tips by feel in her apron pocket. Eventually, I let it go. Growth is sometimes about unclenching. You're probably waiting for the second twist. Here it is. We found out Wyndham had been selling tenant data, not just names and balances. Patterns, the kind that tell marketers when to nudge people with predatory credit offers. It wasn't illegal. It was common. It was rotten. I brought the file to Ethan. He went quiet in the way he does, when his head runs faster than his face. "We stop this," he said. "All of it. Today." "Not just stop," I said. "You tell them why. And you give people a way to opt out from every bit of the data slop you inherited." He did. He walked into a room full of executives who could buy small countries with their annual bonuses. He said no more, and he meant it. They pushed back referenced market norms, cited competitors. He said, "Be better than the worst thing we can legally get away with." They hate that sentence. It stuck. The internet had thoughts. Of course it did. Half called him a hero, half called him a hypocrite. Both halves missed the point. The point was the policy changed. And because I know you'll ask. Yes, we eventually fell in love. Not because of the money, or the rescue, or the optics. Because he learned to wait, while I learned to lean. Because he stopped needing to be the answer, and started wanting to be the person standing next to me, while I found mine. Because Bella, who has a better radar than most adults I know, looked at him one morning over pancakes and said, "You're a safe person," like she was stamping his passport. We had a small ceremony in the courtyard of the new place, string lights and cupcakes, and Mrs. Chun in a blue dress that made her look like the sky just before it starts telling the truth. Thomas cried. The CFO sent a plant with a card that said, "For when ROI looks like joy," which made me smile in a way that surprised me. Ethan and I wrote vows that sounded more like operating agreements than poetry, because that's how we are. Keep a ledger, but put the feelings in the margins where you will read them every day. I'm not telling you this for the fairy tale. I'm telling you because the twist matters more than the frosted ending. The twist was never that a rich man swooped in. The twist was that he discovered he was part of the problem, then chose to be part of the solution in public, with receipts with policies that outlive anyone's applause. The twist was that I said yes to help with terms, and my yes didn't make me small. It made space for 100 other yeses with better outcomes. So let me ask you directly. Do you think that's fair, that so much of a person's chance at dignity can hinge on whether someone powerful happens to be in the right church at the right time? Is it fair that a phone call can make a landlord act human when a mother's voice could not? If it were you, what would you have done in that lobby with your shame and your gratitude and your fury, all trying to talk at once? Here's where we end. And I hope it makes you argue in the comments with kindness and fire. I want policy, not miracles. I want systems that don't need saints. I want the grocery clerk who counts quarters at the end of her shift to never see an orange paper on her door because the company upstairs decided vacancy loss is better than one more human heartbreak. I want the doctor to call the insurance and the supervisor to say yes without a 3-hour hold. I want bridge to become normal and boring and everywhere, so that it stops being a name and starts being a given. If you disagree with me, say so. Tell me why charity is enough. Tell me why a foundation can fix what a law refuses to touch. Tell me why responsibility ends at the property line. If you agree, tell me where the crack is in your town, what policy you'd write today. If you had the pen, what bridge you wish someone had built when you were counting grapes in the produce aisle and pretending your child couldn't see you do the math. We're going to keep pushing. Bella is breathing easier and reading everything in sight. I'm still learning to rest without apologizing for it. Ethan is learning to lead like a person, not a brand. The company is learning how to be accountable with its profit, not just generous with its scraps. We will mess up. We will fix it. Out loud. Stick around because next week, I'm sitting down with a housing attorney and a former landlord to talk about evictions, late fees, and the moral math. We're all pretending isn't happening. You won't want to miss it. If this hit you anywhere. Tender tap, like so. The algorithm knows stories like this. Matter, subscribe for more real life and hard questions. And please drop your city and your story in the comments. When did help show up for you, and what would real fairness look like where you live? I'm listening. We all should be.